I assume you're watching this video because Furnished Finder is not working that well for you. You're not sourcing tenants. It's not going quite the way you expected. And or you're thinking about starting a furnished 30+ day rental and you're not sure about Furnished Finder yet, or you have a concern that it won't work for you. That's fine. If that is why you clicked on this video, that's great, because this video is for you. So the first thing we're going to cover is potentially why Furnished Finder isn't working as well as it has in the past. The second thing we're going to cover is why you should still be hopeful about the midterm space and stick with it. And then the third part of this video is going to be some hard tactics to have success in the midterm space, separate from Furnished Finder and also in Furnished Finder. So first, let's talk about what we know about Furnished Finder. And probably you came to midterm rentals via the route of finding out about Furnished Finder and then midterm rentals, or you found out about Furnished Finder through midterm rentals. Midterm rentals being a 30+ day furnished rental, and then Furnished Finder is one of the platforms to get you tenants for a 30+ day furnished rental. What is a misconception in this space is that traveling nurses are the only people that need these 30+ day rentals, and it is also a major problem with Furnished Finder, which I will speak to in a minute. But that's probably how you've heard of it, is that you kind of know, hey, this is the route for getting those nurse tenants. Those nurse tenants rent for 30 days or more. They need a place that's furnished. And I think a lot of people, this rental model, the midterm rental model, appeals to them because it is usually legal in most cities. Baltimore and one other city that people keep posting on in my comments make it illegal at the 90-day mark, but everybody else it's 30+ days unless you're in an HOA. And if you're in an HOA, you need to check your docs and make sure that you don't have a limitation for more than 30 days, because then that's going to be a problem, or at least it's going to be something that you need to know about. I think that that appeals to a lot of people, is that it's legal within your city. And then also short-term rental tenants can be quite demanding, and so midterm rental tenants aren't as much. So if you don't like the idea of talking to your tenants all the time or having to answer questions, this is really appealing because they're coming in for 30 days, they're longer stays, and you don't have to think about it. And then finally, I think people really like the idea of nurses. I think nurses have a pretty good reputation in the culture. We think about them as treating our property well, being respectful, not partying, paying their bills on time. And so that tenant pool is very attractive. That's what we know about Furnished Finder and about renting to traveling nurses. And then the gap here is when it's not going that well, why is that happening? I've written 3 books on midterm rentals, and at least 2 of them cover Furnished Finder quite a bit. So I am part of that group that had a lot of success with Furnished Finder, and my success on the platform started in 2017 and pretty much ran until, let's say, mid-2022, and it kind of dried up. And then with my consulting clients, I'm hearing this a lot as well. So people are coming in and saying, it's just not working for me. I'm not getting any hits at all, or I'm getting leads and they're unmatched leads, and those unmatched leads aren't going anywhere. And then the other complaint I'm hearing pretty consistently is that people are coming in and they're asking for a discounted rate. So they're nowhere even close to what the host thinks they should be getting. And so the tenant is saying not like they want $100 off a month, but that they want like 50% off, which is pretty dramatic. And I think part of this disconnect between what the host think they should get and what the tenant thinks they should pay may or may not have to do with some of the stats that are being published on the Furnished Finder platform, and or I've heard people say that Furnished Finder is quoting that you should make 2 times long-term unfurnished rents. I have not found that to be realistic, not for myself or for the people that I host for. Seeing much closer to a 40 to 60% markup during high season, and then closer to like 30 to 40% during low season, and that's above long-term unfurnished. So just right there, the expectations may be a mismatch, and if you are priced wrong, that's going to create all sorts of issues. The good news on this, and I say this all the time, is that almost all rentals are rentable. It's just a marketing and pricing issue. And I know that it can be disappointing to not make what you think you should, but some money is certainly better than no money. And a big mistake that we see in real estate, not just with rentals, but also with people buying real estate or selling real estate, is when you're really dug in and you're like, this should be the price. Well, if you're not getting rentals at that price, the market is telling you that that's not the price. By the way, if that pricing tip was helpful, please like this video. And if you want more content around Furnished Finder, midterm rentals, self-property management, the various platforms to find tenants, subscribe, and then you'll always get a notification when I have a new video out. The second reason why you may not be having success on Furnished Finder is that Furnished Finder is having growing awareness amongst host landlords, but it is not having growing awareness amongst tenants. You are having outsized competition in the sense that everybody that is a host landlord and has been a host landlord in Airbnb or with long-term rentals or in general is interested in rental properties and investing has heard of Furnished Finder, and they're queuing right in on traveling nurses. And you can see it all over the forums, whether it's an Airbnb or Bigger Pockets or Reddit. This is like the hot topic that people are talking about, traveling nurses, and then also insurance claims. So everybody that's kind of interested in rental properties and stuff is talking about Furnished Finders, right? But the tenants aren't. The tenants are not keyed into midterm rentals necessarily. They're not proactively thinking about it. They may stumble into midterm rentals because they see it as a convenience, or all of a sudden they're thinking, well, I'm a remote worker, I could live somewhere, or some situation has come up for them where they need a furnished long-term rental. They're not proactively out there thinking about different rental models. It's the hosts that are thinking about that. So the host demographic is really growing. And then primarily your target, especially on Furnished Finder, are nurses. And they talk about medical professionals, but really it's nurses for the most part. And the traveling nurse pool is shrinking and has been shrinking since 2020. So it kind of explains why we had this explosion in popularity with midterm rentals and with traveling nurses and Furnished Finder around 2020. And that's because metro areas needed more traveling nurses. Well, then the vaccine showed up, and then those traveling nurses started to see their contracts getting canceled and then also their pay going down. So it's a really bad situation to be in when you have outsized competition from the other hosts, and then the main tenant pool that you're going after is shrinking. The good news on this though is that that's really a Furnished Finder problem. It's not a host problem. It's Furnished Finder's issue to try and find other ways to get new tenants in there. It's not a problem for you as the host because the tenant pool for midterm rentals is wide, and it's something that we should all be very optimistic about. Which takes me into point number 2 for the agenda, which is like, all is not lost. You should actually be really excited about this demographic. And the reason why I think you should be really excited about this demographic is that yes, nurses exist in it, and yes, insurance claims exist in it, but we're also seeing a lot of popularity for midterm rentals for like laborers. So if you have any kind of, if you can see a lot of cranes in your area, then you know that there's a tenant pool out there. Also a lot of manufacturing jobs, just groups where they're going to be bringing workers in to do a certain amount of work, and then those people probably don't have homes or furniture there and they need somewhere to go. So we're seeing popularity there. People don't love this, but college kids really need these rentals. They come out of the dorms and they need somewhere for 9 months. They're more than happy to take a furnished place. I rent to college kids all day long and I love them, but I know some people are not comfortable with that. Some other demographics that need this are people getting divorced. They're not ready to say it, but really they are getting divorced and they need sort of a trial period. People that are new to a city and they're not sure, they want to buy, but they're not sure where yet. So they're going to do a rental and their stuff is in storage in the meantime. Military families, so I live near military bases. A lot of those military bases are short on housing, and so the soldiers will get a stipend to go and rent somewhere. Also, people that have a new build and the new build isn't finished on the timeline that they were promised, so they're out of a house and they need somewhere to go. You do not need to be bummed out about this. You should be excited because there are tons of demographics that need midterm rentals currently, but even more exciting is that there's going to be tons of people in the future that want midterm rentals. And the reason why I think that is because I think they're going to grow enormously, both with young kids and with seniors. Now, we see Airbnb hosts, we see the highest level of increase in hosts among seniors, and I think they're also going to start to use it. And I know you may be confused about Airbnb. I'll talk about that in a minute. Airbnb is really just a platform for furnished rentals. It doesn't have to be a short-term rental. It just has to be a furnished rental. But anyway, so we see a lot of growth amongst seniors on the Airbnb platform, but also I think with younger people, they really value experiences more than they value owning things, and owning things will tie you down and limit you from experiences. So it's not a good strategy for young people that want to travel and have experiences to have a lease, to have furniture. And I happen to think that because they've been primed, especially like the newer generations, all they've ever known is Airbnb. They're very familiar with going and staying in someone else's place and having having it furnished. And I think this very much is going to extend into long-term rentals, because as a young person, why wouldn't I walk in and out of someone else's property that has been curated, that looks cool, that's nice, that's in a city, and all I have to do is walk in and walk out. So to me, I think the midterm rental demographic, kind of the sky is the limit. And same thing, I think we're really going to see it with seniors once they retire, and just remote working professionals. Again, when you have kids and a young family and they have to be in school, that's a whole different thing, but that is certainly not the entire United States. There's lots of people that do not have those circumstances and have the freedom of movement, and I think furnished rentals are going to become very much in demand, because it's a great way to try out a city or a place, or be close to family but not staying directly with them, or taking a trial on your marriage without saying it's done yet, right? So there's lots of people that need these midterm rentals, and I cannot emphasize this enough, because I say it in these videos and then I'll say it at the top of my consulting calls, and people will be like, yeah, but nurses, or yeah, but I'm so close to this hospital or whatever. And it's like, literally the best thing you can do is try and change your mindset on that, because I co-host for people. Like, so not only do I have a 92% occupancy rate on my own properties, but I also co-host for people all over the United States and source and vet their first tenants. If you are interested in that, it is called the Hold My Hand package, and I will link to that. But I see the data across the United States and who is coming in for lots of different properties, and lately it hasn't been a ton of nurses. I haven't had any problem getting people rented, and it has not been primarily nurses that want these properties. So it's not just me thinking about this, it's like I'm also seeing the real-time data, and I'm seeing it nationwide, which is exciting. It's exciting for all of us, because if you have a furnished rental, it kind of means, hey, there's a bright big future for you. Okay, and we are finally at agenda point number 3, which is tactics, and I'm going to give you a couple tactics for Furnished Finder, because if you're watching this, you probably have already paid for the subscription, you have a Furnished Finder listing, and it's like, yeah, but I'd like to clean that up because I've already paid for it. And then I'm also going to talk about some tactics and other platforms to find renters as well. Okay, so the first thing that I see in the Reddit forums of traveling nurses is that there seems to be a major miscommunication between the hosts and the nurses, right? And so the hosts are like, no one ever reaches out to me, I never hear from anyone. And the nurses are saying, I email and I never hear back from anyone. And I think that this is maybe a problem with the blast emails. So my number 1 tip is to make the first line of your description your email. Introduce yourself with 1 sentence and 1 sentence only. Hi, I'm Erin. I live in Colorado and I love hiking. Please reach out directly to me at erinandjamesrealestate.com, right? And so just give them the information that they need to get in touch with you immediately. So that is tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to be more strategic with your headline. Think about what your property has to offer that is most appealing either to you or to other renters that you've had in the past, and talk about that in the headline. So get rid of words like cozy, comfortable, spacious, light-filled. Your photo should reflect that. What you want to talk about is 1 mile from the beach, or AC, or dishwasher in the unit. And I know some of those things that it's like, oh, it's obvious. But if you have an economy property where it's not super exciting, talk about the basics. Talk about things that make that tenant's life very convenient. If you're pet friendly, advertise that. A lot of times you'll cut out 50% of your competition if you're pet friendly. So that's a really good way to get in front of more tenants and have less host competition. So just make your headline talk about specifics and take out any word that potentially could be subjective. So those are my 2 tips for Furnished Finder. My final tip for having success for finding midterm renters without Furnished Finder is to go on Airbnb. So Airbnb is very much seen as a platform of short-term rentals that are furnished, but really it is a platform of furnished rentals, and they are doing everything that they can to expand into this 30+ day furnished space. So a couple tips if you want to have your long-term rental on Airbnb. My first tip is to turn off instant book. You want to vet everyone that's coming in. Second tip, when you are looking at the vetting, just click on their name and see what other landlords are saying about them. That's more important than anything. You can set the limitation as far as minimum number of days that someone can rent to 30 days, and I recommend doing that, and I recommend having the maximum number of days be 365. And that's because more and more we're also seeing people that don't just want these for 30 days or 90 days, they want them for 6 months, they want them for a year. I see a lot for people that do the Hold My Hand package. that mentor with me and that I co-host with. I just this week had somebody rent for a year. I had someone else rent for 8 months. I had someone rent for 4 months, right? So we are starting to see people rent for a longer and longer period of time. And if you are at all worried about renting to someone on Airbnb without a lease or a deposit, I have a whole video about the ways that you are protected in Airbnb, and you can find it here.